Subcommittee on National Security will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. May 8, 2018, President Trump made one of the most momentous decisions of his presidency by terminating the United States' participation in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, better known as the Iran deal, and he decided to immediately begin reimposing sanctions on Iran. The President made the right decision. He saw this deal for what it was, calling it, quote, one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into, end quote. The Iran deal has empowered the Iranian regime and has fueled Iran's ambitions for regional dominance. It's not hard to see why. The deal provided Iran with billions upon billions of dollars in upfront sanctions relief, including airlifting $1.7 billion in cash, effectively to the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps. To obtain this financial windfall, Iran agreed to a temporary set of restrictions on its nuclear program that sunset after 10, and in some cases 15 years. But by allowing Iran a vast nuclear infrastructure and allowing Iran to reduce its breakout time to almost zero, the deal paves the way for Iran to have a bomb. And the deal's fundamentally flawed inspection regime allows Iran to block inspectors from accessing military sites, leaving the IAEA incapable of verifying if Iran is even complying with the deal. The agreement did nothing to stop Iran's ballistic missile program or its support for terrorism. Now Tehran is using the financial windfall from the deal to spread money to terrorists and insurgents throughout the Middle East. Iran and its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are firing rockets into Israel, propping up the Assad government and its butchery in Syria, supporting anti-American Shiite militias in Iraq, bolstering Hezbollah to unprecedented levels of strength in Lebanon, arming Houthi rebels in Yemen, and backing the Taliban in Afghanistan. And thanks to Israeli intelligence revealed recently by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, we now know without question that the Iran deal was built on lies. As part of the deal, Iran's leaders promised never to build a nuclear weapon and to come clean to the IAEA about their past nuclear activities. Iran's foreign minister, Javad Zarif, said Iran, quote, didn't have any program to develop nuclear weapons and considered them, quote, both irrational as well as immoral, end quote. But the documents obtained by Israel prove that Iran had a nuclear weapons program, that Iran brazenly lied by denying it, and that even after entering the JCPOA, Iran kept a secret archive of tens of thousands of files on its nuclear weapons program. Now, when the Iran deal was first announced, President Obama's advisor, Ben Rhodes, drew on his MFA in writing to create a, quote, echo chamber of false narratives to try to sell the agreement. Now, despite overwhelming evidence that the deal wasn't working and Iran was acting in bad faith, the foreign policy establishment and the enablers in the press are again spinning a web of deception to try to undermine President Trump's decision. They claim, his critics, that he, quote, violated the JCPOA by withdrawing. In reality, the Obama State Department admitted in a letter to then Congressman Mike Pompeo that, quote, the JCPOA is not a treaty or an executive agreement and is not a signed document. The JCPOA reflects political commitments between Iran, the P5+1, and the EU. The deal would never have been ratified as a binding treaty because it was opposed by bipartisan majorities of both the House and Senate, including Senator Chuck Schumer and the Democratic ranking members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The Iran deal was effectively a non-binding commitment between President Obama and Ayatollah Khamenei, which imposes no obligation upon a successor president to follow it. As Harvard's Jack Goldsmith writes, you don't get to make an enormously consequential international deal in the face of opposition from Congress and from the public, I might add, and skirt the need for congressional consent by making the agreement non-binding under domestic and international law, and then complain about a subsequent withdrawal, end quote. President Trump's opponents claim his decision was reckless and leaves America isolated. The truth is that the administration conducted a lengthy review of the JCPOA, held extensive negotiations with European allies to try to correct its many flaws, and set a clear deadline for results. Now, Secretary Pompeo has presented a new strategy in which he specified the conditions for a new agreement, including a complete stop to uranium enrichment, a full accounting of past nuclear activities, unqualified access for IAEA inspectors, halting ballistic missile activity, ending support for terrorism, and releasing all hostages. The door remains open for Europe to work with the U.S. to reach a better deal that addresses these issues, but instead of reaping the spoils of the sanctions relief, Iran will now face unprecedented financial pressure from U.S. sanctions, and companies around the globe will have to decide whether they would rather do business with the world's biggest economy or the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. In contrast to the narrative that withdrawing from the deal leaves America isolated, many countries in the Middle East strongly support President Trump's approach, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain. They're the ones who are most at risk from Iranian misconduct. By ending U.S. participation in the Iran deal, President Trump demonstrated that American strength and leadership are back again. We should all be thankful that the President kept his word. He campaigned on this being a bad deal, said he would terminate it if they couldn't get better terms, and he followed through on that. And I'd also like to point out, since I did these remarks, there's been reports about whether or not Iran was in fact able to access the U.S. financial system. That was supposed to be a no-go. We had testimony during the pendency and when the deal was agreed to from the Obama administration saying that that was not going to happen. This committee obviously is going to want to investigate what happened there, because that is a really big deal. But I thank the witnesses for being here. I look forward to your testimony. And it's my pleasure, in lieu of my friend from Massachusetts, to recognize for his opening statement my friend from Vermont, Mr. Lynch.